It is safe to say that you cannot spend time as a Unitarian Universalist minister and self-proclaimed and self-styled social justice warrior without being in attendance at your fair share of protests and other acts of nonviolent civil disobedience. From marriage equality and trans rights to immigrant justice to reproductive justice to Black Lives Matter, suffice it to say that a good portion of my short ministerial career, and in reality much of my 36 years of life, has been spent standing out on the sidewalk in groups large and small, chanting slogans and holding up holy signs and banners. I remember one such event in particular about 5 years ago with a group of people from various UU congregations in North Texas who were standing outside in the rain in front of the Omni Hotel in Dallas, where a major campaign fundraising event was taking place, and for which Senator Ted Cruz and Donald Trump Jr. were scheduled to be keynote speakers. I spent 4 hours strategically placed at the front entrance to the hotel in my ubiquitous yellow side glove t-shirt, a black umbrella in one hand, and a sign with the phrase Unitarian Universalist stand with LGBTQIA+ Americans written in hot pink marker, making sure every Lexus and Mercedes that turned into the hotel could see me and clearly read every word of my sign. As spiritually nourished and energized as I may have felt, I could not help but hear a small voice of doubt in the back of my head asking the question, what am I doing here? What difference did I think I was really going to make? The people that were attending the fundraiser had already well made up their minds in advance about where they stood on the issues and where they were choosing to put their money. How naive was I to think that the sight of some white guy in a yellow shirt standing by the side of the road with a soggy poster board sign was suddenly going to change all of that. Most of them probably didn't notice, or if they did, they didn't care. My sense of accomplishment of the social justice work that I had spent the entire day engaging in quickly turned into uncomfortable feelings of doubt and uncertainty. If you were to take a poll of the top 20 favorite human emotions that people experience, my guess is that uncertainty is not one that you would find on that list. Yet, this uncomfortable sense of uncertainty is exactly what we are forced to sit with and consider in Mark 16. This marks the final chapter of Mark's gospel narrative, and if we have already read Matthew and Luke, we are expecting that triumphant moment when we arrive at the tomb to find the stone pushed back, and we are greeted by an encounter with the person of Jesus in all of Jesus' magnificent glory, who appears to us to provide divine reassurance and a sense of hope for the future of the kingdom of God within the world. But we don't get that from the author of Mark. We get very much the opposite. The women who come to the tomb to anoint the body of Jesus arrive to find the stone has already been pushed back, and no one is there. They enter the tomb and they are greeted by a young man dressed in a white robe that may or may not have been an angel, we think, who tells them in a very nonchalant way that Jesus has risen. He is not here. And that they are to tell the disciples and Peter Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee when you see him. We do not get the moment where we get to meet Jesus again. We're not even sure if Jesus has actually been resurrected. And if so, was it a physical resurrection of the body or a spiritual resurrection? We don't get a moment of hope and confidence as the women leave the tomb. Instead, we are told that they fled the tomb bewildered and trembling, and the author ends the gospel with the 4 most uncomfortable words in all of the New Testament. They were so afraid. I would love to tell you that this is only part of the story, and I would love for there to be an ending where Jesus still appears to the disciples gathered in the upper room and commands them to go out into the 4 corners of the world and preach the good news before he is taken up into heaven and assumes his right place at the kingdom of God. And you will find just that ending in many different biblical translations. except the author of Mark didn't write it. At least most biblical scholars are sure that they didn't. No, we are forced to confront the fact that this great gospel narrative of the ministry of Jesus Christ, that the author of Mark has been constructing for 16 chapters and depicting for us ends quickly in 8 verses and with the word friend. The underlying question that Mark 16 presents us with is, now what? What happens now? Easter is celebrated every single year. Every single year we hear stories about the empty tomb. Every single year we hear about how Jesus is risen. But after all the services, all the Easter brunches, all the Easter egg hunts, the underlying question that I want to ask is, what do we do differently? How are we changed by what we have heard? What does it mean for us and our lives going forward? For me, the answer is right there in verse 7. The young person tells the women, now go and tell the disciples and Peter, Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee, where you will see him just as he told you. It is a reminder that the message of Jesus and the work that Jesus did to realize a better world and a better humanity is still at work in the world. And it is a call for us to go out into the world and get right back to work. We, as Unitarian Universalists, the tireless champions that we are for social justice, we are the tireless champions for social justice because we know the kingdom of God is brought about by what we stand for and what we do to create it. We are descended from a long line of prophetic people who have not been afraid to stand up and speak up for what they believe in, often at great cost. The Spanish theologian Michael Servetus, considered by many to be the first Unitarian martyr, was burned alive atop a pile of his books at the Council of Geneva. The 16th century Transylvanian Unitarian preacher Ferenc David was arrested and died in prison for his part in helping the Prince of Transylvania adopt an edict of religious tolerance that was the first of its kind in Europe. The Reverend James J. Reed from Wichita, Kansas, and Viola Lietze from Detroit, Michigan, who were beaten and shot respectively by racists and Ku Klux Klan members in the South for their work toward racial justice and their support for the Civil Rights Act. Reverend McKendry, an usher at the Knoxville Unitarian Universalist Church, was shot and killed in 2008 when he stood up to shield churchgoers from a man who had targeted the church out of his hatred for, quote, Democrats, liberals, African Americans, and homosexuals. We are defined in our faith not just by what we believe and say we believe from the pews every Sunday, but in what it is we do and say to truly live out that faith. This is precisely why the bleak ending to Mark 16 is so powerful and so profound. It is not for God or Jesus to tell us what to do, but for us to determine for ourselves. We have been given the perfect example through the actions of Jesus as to what we should do. We have been warned that it will be by no means easy and the cost will be great. But we have also been told right from the start that this is the beginning of the good news. We have been told that the divine goes before us into Galilee. We are being invited to follow along the journey to finish the good works and the good news that was already began. The question is, what happens next? In what way will we respond? Will we say nothing to no one and run away in fear, as the women did from the tomb? Will we hide in an upper room, fearful of and for our own safety, as the disciples did? Or will we be called forward to be and to do more? If we are to answer the question and the call of how to do more, it is my honor to hand the pulpit over to a friend, colleague, and fellow social justice warrior who is helping to lead the way in how we are to respond to that call, by the important work that he and his organization are doing. Please welcome a friend of this congregation and the executive director of Family Promise of San Joaquin County, Mr. Jordan Watson.
Good call. Thank you. Can you all hear me? Louder? All right. Thank you, Reverend Matt, for inviting me to join you today. It's an honor to be speaking with First Unitarian Universalist, knowing that this congregation was instrumental in laying the groundwork to help make Family Promise a reality in our community. In the same way Reverend Matt describes Jesus realizing a better world and the work needed to make humanity a better place, your church envisioned a better local community and took action to help make this dream a reality that would allow us to start working in our community that so desperately needs our help. In the 2021-2022 school year, the last school year that was finally completed, the San Joaquin County Office of Education reported that there are 5,382 homeless students enrolled in San Joaquin County schools. That number does not include children that are not old enough to be enrolled in school, or children that are just not enrolled in school at all, because they may be transient. Many of these children stay under the radar. They're living with their families out of their cars, or they're couch surfing, staying with friends or family, or doubling up or tripling up in a very small apartment. These are kids living in situations that make it hard for them to focus in school. They're more likely to develop mental health issues, and it just brings general instability to their lives. Family Promise works by honing into resources that are already available in our community. We partner with local congregations and organizations to transform space in their buildings into temporary shelter for our guests for 1 week at a time, 4 times throughout the year. In addition to shelter, volunteers from the congregation prepare meals, they set up or break down the shelter, they spend fellowship time with guests. There's a 15-passenger van that picks up the guests, brings them from the day center to the host congregation every evening and back to the day center every morning. The day center, which is our central hub, where families are able to shower, where they're able to do their laundry, where students, where the children are getting picked up to take them to their school districts, to their schools, keeping them in their school of origin. This is also an address that the adults are able to use to put on job applications and for applying for programs in our community. This is also where they receive services from our case manager, where they meet one-on-one and build specific service plans specific to them to help address issues and goals and create a plan that is going to help them build and create sustainability and eventually get them back on their feet. This addresses barriers that maybe made them homeless in the first place, gives them education so that they're able to not become homeless again in the future. They participate in workshops or classes such as financial literacy, parenting classes if they need it, other classes. Again, it really depends on the families and their needs. And once they graduate from our program, we continue to work with the family in what we call a stabilization program for another 6 months, helping to make sure that they continue to have support and make sure that they stay independent and not fall back into homelessness. So you're probably sitting here thinking, wow, this program sounds so great. What can I do to help? Well, in short, you already are. First, you is already involved with our program, and several of you, probably many of you in this room, are already volunteering for Family Promise through First UU, or not through First UU. You might be an overnight host, you might be making a meal, sharing fellowship time, playing games with children, or maybe helping with homework. Maybe there's a different role that you play for your church. Or maybe you're just learning about this for the first time, and the second chance that it brings to children and their families experiencing one of the most challenging times of their lives. If you haven't been involved, or if you want to become more involved, here's a few ways that you can make a difference. And I do encourage you to come speak to me after this. We have a table set up in the hall about some of these ways if you're interested in learning more. But you can, one, volunteer. If you're able to, write down the dates First UU is hosting our program in your calendar. We have the dates on our table. Give us your information. We have a volunteer sign-up sheet. Put down your phone number, your email address, and when it's time to start planning the week that you guys are hosting there, you'll be contacted and you'll be able to help fill in some of those roles. Number two, you can donate. Because of our unique model of shelter, we are able to operate at about a third of the cost of a traditional shelter. And that being said, we don't actually even receive any government money, and the vast majority of our budget comes from monthly recurring donors and our local community in general. Anyone can be a monthly recurring donor. I'm a monthly recurring donor, and you can do whatever's comfortable for you. When I first started as a monthly recurring donor, before I was even a staff member, I started at $10 a month. And recently, this last year, I bumped it up to $25 a month. And we have some people who are able to give more, and they do, and some that give less. I have a lot of friends that are my age or younger giving $5 a month. And that's, you think about it, it's a cup of coffee. It's not too big. Or maybe you're already giving, or maybe you are not able to give. You're able to have influence and be able to invite others to. And you would like to share with your friends or your family about our program, the work that's being done, and encourage them to either, one, volunteer with you. You can have them volunteer with you here at church, or two, to donate, or three, just spread the word. Our program, while it's been in development for a number of years, about 6 years now, it is newly operating in this community. And we're continuing to build relationships. And we do that by word of mouth, and we do it through our power of our community. So if you have connections to community resources, school teachers, government officials, other churches that might be interested in becoming involved with Family Promise, or know of a family that needs our help potentially, introduce them to our program. There's brochures that are at the church here. There's business cards that are left at the church here. Your church knows how to get in contact with us if any of those things come up, any of the needs of trying to get that help to someone. You don't have to have all the answers. You can just be the connection. One last way that you can get involved, come and learn more. Come visit our day center, see what we're doing at our hub. You can schedule a time to come take a tour with me directly, or as Mary was saying in the beginning, we're having an open house on April 15th. So if you don't have one of those flyer inserts, get one of those, or feel free to be in touch. I have a bunch of business cards that you are more than welcome to take and be in touch with me directly. The open house is on Saturday next week from 2 to 4:30 p.m. and it is a family-friendly event. In addition to touring our day center, we do have a big fundraiser that we're doing just shortly after that on the 18th. We are participating in a community fundraiser called 209 Gives. Maybe some of you have actually participated in donating with that before. And on the 18th, we have a goal of $20,000 for 10 and 10 new monthly recurring donors. We are hoping to be able to bolster our funds to be able to continue being able to help the families in our program throughout the year. So if you donate, spread the word, and just open up the conversation, because it's important that our community knows about Family Promise and the work that's being done to help families. Thank you, and happy Easter.